not to do is to come into the interview and really pretend you know so much about my organization. You're trying to show that you've done your research, but it comes across the wrong way. So I actually have had candidates, plus you don't know my business. You really, you think you know it, right? And then it can go very quickly into being a little, I don't know what the word is. But I've had a lot of entry-level candidates who want to show me that they've done their research, and they'll spend 15 minutes interviewing, telling me stuff like, so they're wasting the time, the short amount of time we have. And I think the goal there is that you're trying to show you know the company, right? So why don't you just say, I've done a lot of research, I've looked at your website, I'm really impressed by what I see. I look forward to talking about some of those things with you during the interview. So you said it. I've researched, I looked at your website, I've got some questions later. Let's get to the interview. Okay? Because I've had people tell me, wow, misoprostol, the drug, just originally a gastro, I'm like, what?
Yes, I was at that meeting, I know.
And you can also ask, you can phrase your questions. So Alexandra, at the very beginning, when we started this panel, said, ask intelligent questions. You can phrase your questions in a way that lets the interviewer know that, hey, this person has done the research, but at the same time, you're eliciting information from us. Instead of rattling off what you've learned, use what you learned and switch it around and ask us a question. That'll make us go, oh, yeah, this person's done the research. Okay, let's have a conversation.
And that lets the interviewer do the talking, and then the interviewer will leave that and say, oh, I really like this person. You don't have to do anything, you can sit there. The other thing I absolutely recommend you do is bring samples of your work. This actually has been standing out. I've had people start doing this, and it really stands out. They bring samples to the interview, and they know how they might relate to things, and they say like, oh yeah, for example, I just want to show you a PowerPoint presentation with my group study, or I want to just show you like a spreadsheet I worked on, or I want to show you the sample of my writing. I can just show it to you and leave it for you to read later. But so to bring samples of your work, because that's what you're doing here at the school, right? So bring some samples of that. The other thing that I think when you're asking, like we're focusing on what questions to ask. So take these notes down, or you'll have them on the video. You can follow up on them. Remember that there's 3 sets of questions. You have your opening questions, you have your questions during the interview, and you have your closing questions. And my favorite question to ask people is, so tell me about yourself. And that's an elevator speech. And so you have to have 2 elevator speeches, one for networking. Do you know what an elevator speech is? If you don't know it, raise your hand. If you're awake, not raise your hand. I don't see hands going up. So do you know an elevator speech? Yes?
No.
Okay. You have to, no?
No, I
Okay. Have a 30-second or 15-second. Hi, my name is Maria. I am currently finishing up my graduate studies at University of Laverne, which is one of the top 10 schools, blah, blah, blah. I am focusing in particular in finance related to manufacturing, and I'm looking for some opportunities in that sector. Okay? I've done some projects that include work with an internship, or I did a costing analysis project for a local manufacturer. And by the way, I happen to speak Swahili, and I noticed that the organization has a branch office in Africa. Elevator speech for networking, elevator speech for the interview. So what happens is I've asked people at interviews, so tell me about yourself. Freeze. And then my favorite part is, I really want to work here, right? And I say, why? So those are the simplest questions that nobody's prepared for. So you do prepare for questions like, so how are you better than your competitors? Or how is that strategy going? Or how would I contribute to your immediate growth? So you'll have those questions, right? Don't forget the really simple question that all of us are going to try to stress you with, and just to see how you react to stress. And the question is, so tell me about yourself. Da, da, da. So, and that I really want to work here? First fact is why? So, and the other closing comment to tell you about or the other suggestion to be very aware of the questions is, so do you have any more questions for us? So the closing of an interview is maybe one of the more important areas, I think. And you probably have more suggestions on how to do that. I would just say talk to Christina and the team here, because the closing questions are going to be important.
Those can be critical to show you've actually thought about it. One of the ones I used to like to ask is, so what challenges do you foresee this position presenting itself with?
That's great.
I think something that shows you're already thinking, I got the job, and what do I have to face, and how am I going to tackle that? You're already you're kind of ahead of the game with that question. Things like that show initiative. That's one that people usually don't think of.
One of the first questions that I always ask when they present, do you have any questions for me? I always say, if I was to be in the seat, what would be my goals for the first 3 months? What would be my goals in my first 3 months? So what do you want me to do in the first 3 months? That way I know what my impact is going to be. And it's also my way of interviewing them. Because if I don't like what I'm going to be doing the first 3 months, then more than likely I'm not going to like what I'm doing the first year there.
Sorry to interrupt real quick.
Go ahead.
Is it okay? So do you suggest that people have a 30, 60, 90-day ready before they go on an interview so they can kind of present it?
Absolutely. That's always one of the questions. It's one of the standard questions that you'll get asked is, what are your goals? Because when you go into an interview, if you don't have any goals set for yourself, then how are you going to be an asset, a value add to the organization?
Thank you, panel members. Unfortunately, our time together must come to an end. If you can all please fill out our evaluations, and if our panel can maybe stay behind for a few more minutes and talk to individual students regarding their questions, that'd be great. But I'd like to thank you all for coming out today, and I'd like to especially thank our panel members.
Also, to let everybody know, the California State Auditor is doing an information session on Wednesday from 5 to 6 p.m. up here on 3rd